And there was another... Yep.
Richard Jeffries, te whare wānanga o Awanuiarangi. Tuatai ki te mihi atau ki te whare wānanga o Wairaka, e whakatū nei tēnei wānanga. He wānanga whakahira. Ko kāre o na karakia, hoi anō mahari tēnā kōrero. He kaupapa whakahira tēnei. Ki te tautoko au i te whakatauki, i kōrero he koe Shane i te tīmatanga, hoi anō tērā no te tai whakatauki e hāngai ana ki nā kōrero i te pōnei. Ki auna i tāia tōmoko ki te aha. I tāia tōmoko ki te aha. He aha nō nā pūkenga nā pūmanu a kua whiwhi nei i te tangata ke tū tohongi i roti tana mahi. He whakaaro noi ho tēnā. So I just want to applaud my colleagues at Unitec for having tonight. I'm really pleased to hear that Indigenous entrepreneurship is going to be a curricular pathway here at Unitec because it's really important. Because the thing I want to just talk about really is by Māori, for Māori, yes, but I think one of the major challenges we have going forward is by Māori, for Māori, as Māori. And I agree with Eru and Heta and the Minister talking about we need to be thinking about, yes, SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises. We've got some fantastic examples here, but there are different challenges with Māori land trusts and corporations. There are different challenges at the iwi runanga level. And it's interesting hearing in quiet discussions, not in public, but in quiet discussions with people from some of the early iwi with settlements, maybe questioning the way in which things have rolled out, played out for them. And part of that, I think, is the thing about us having control of those entities and also the way in which the business agenda is set. So one of the things we're doing at Awanuiarangi, similar to what Unitec is now doing, is we're developing a Bachelor of Indigenous Business. I think one of the challenges and one of the things that's going to attract hopefully more of our young people into the business discipline, because it hasn't been a very popular one for our young people, is the ability to see our culture and the way in which business is done. I think that's one of the challenges for all of us, is doing business as Māori. Looking at models, as we've developed this curricula, it's been quite difficult actually to find in the literature anyway, much about Indigenous business practice and Indigenous business models. We've started to look at what the Japanese are doing, strong cultural elements in the way in which they do business. Chinese, similarly. The Muslims, a significant example, and there's some stuff starting to come out of Africa now with some of the emerging academics from the tribes in Africa. Similarly, North America, but not much. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of actually framing up our own models of business from a Māori worldview, a Māori perspective. And I think that's one of the challenges and that we're taking up here, and hopefully that will get more people in. I think it's important that we, yes, build the SMEs, but the big corporations too. I think back for myself, giving a bit away, but nearly 30 years ago, I finished my Bachelor of Management Studies at Waikato. 2 of us that year came out, and I went into a corporate. And I tell you what, it's actually very lonely. I only lasted 3 years in the corporate world, very successful, as our young Māori are, but not much in it for me in terms of taku Māori, taku wairua. And that's one of the challenges, I think, you know, and that's where iwi need to really think through, I think, the kinds of businesses. They have a particular opportunity in terms of quickly establishing a big business. I'm a particular critic of Sealord. I'm attached to them through Pūtea Whakatū Trust at the moment. And the fact that we now have Māori-owned companies, 15, 16 years old, and still middle and senior management, still populated largely by Pākehā people. So still challenges there about who is setting the agenda for these businesses, what are the business models that they're following. But it's hard when you don't have many models to follow. So we need to start setting that example and finding examples offshore, here, that actually give our people the confidence and know that they can actually go into a business career, do 30, 40, 50 years, maybe spend some time in Deloitte or Pricewaterhouse overseas for a while, but then come back and work and know that there's going to be a Māori company waiting for them. So I think that's one of the big challenges. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora. Tēnā rā atu koe. You raised a number of really good and important points. Can I just pick up maybe on the latter point, Minister, with you, when we have these big Māori corporates, if you like, sea lords, well, especially in fisheries. And as Richard has said, when you look at management, there aren't that many Māori that occupy those positions. And we're well aware that we do have good Māori managers. Are you concerned at all about that?
Yes, totally. And we've made this known in the farming business, but also in fishing. You know, there's not many Māori out there actually on the boats and stuff. There's overseas people, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But see, some of these farms that are winning the awards for ahuwhenua, they have a Māori board, but there's actually a Pākehā farmer that's managing the whole estate. So we have got to get that training, that expertise through.
Is there anything wrong with that, do you think?
No, there's nothing wrong with that. But the point is, are we bringing people through who can actually do that? That's what we have to look at. Look, I just want to mention something very entrepreneurial. And that was a year and a half ago, I went to a meeting with Bentham here for the wānanga, Aotearoa. And he had all the CEOs of all the universities and institutions here in Auckland there. And they talked about collaboration and working together. And when it finished, I said, I don't like your chances, but really, they are law unto themselves and so on. Well, a week ago, we launched a project called Māori in Tertiary Education, and it was done by, led by Maria Painga in the Wā. But what it does, it links up all the programs that are available and how to get there and what you require to get on it and where it is, which university, which institute it's at. And it takes Māoris from secondary school, tertiary, to a job, and it leads to a job. And surely that's a good thing for us with gross unemployment that we have, that we can dial up what you want to be and look at those programs. I think that's a very entrepreneurial thing that's happened.
Heta, do you think we have good role models in business? We've spoken a lot about, well, just in the last half hour, about young people wanting to become entrepreneurs. Do we have those good role models for them?
They're probably too invisible. You probably don't see them very often. And whether that's because they lay low for fear of what we talked about earlier, sort of the tall poppy aspect, or whether they're just too busy getting on with stuff.
Because who are we talking about? Who are those ones out there, you know, who are doing well? Good role models.
So the ones that sort of are coming to mind, you probably wouldn't think they're Māori, to be honest, a lot of the time, because they don't look Māori, they probably don't work in a Māori environment, like for iwi or within sort of Māori corporates. But they're definitely out there, but I think there's probably a definite opportunity to bring out more of their stories, start getting those stories to the rangatahi, within the schools in particular. I think the brother there raised a really relevant point. These stories of entrepreneurship aren't actually getting out there to grassroots, so you got nothing to aspire to. And I think if you were to ask a lot of sort of potential role models, they'd be more than happy to give their time, so long as they sort of understand, what they've been asked to do. And if it's to say, just to speak to young people about their experience, what they've achieved and how they've achieved it, I don't think you'd have much of a problem. I mean, this fella should be a role model.
Absolutely.
Go back to Kaikoa and say, bros, I cracked it. This is how I did it. This is how you might be able to do it. So I don't think they have to be, captains of industry. I think you can find role models at all levels. And it's just, like I said, I think it's just a matter of actually sort of telling them to say, we want to hear your stories. We want to put you in front of people. The technology's there. You can actually just throw it up on YouTube or...
maybe that's something a program TPK could look at, Minister.
TPK does have a business facilitation. It's been mentioned here a few times.
Are you concerned, though, when we're talking about, Māori doing so well in the New Zealand economy and playing such an important role, and yet we're struggling to find some really good examples and good role models? Where at least Heta was struggling to try and come up with some names that you can put up there as good role models. We spoke about it before, success breeding success. We want to see those role models to get Māori into business.
Well, they're doing the biz. I mean, that's why you don't sort of see them. They're passionate, and they're focused on what they're doing, and they're doing the business. They're not around parading their own worth and what they can do, because they're focused and they know that the next hurdle is here and the next hurdle is there, and so on. So, but they are around. 20 billion.
There are the likes of, Rob McLeod, Ian Taylor, and what they've achieved. They're definitely out there. But like I say, it was a bit of a struggle to actually sort of rattle off multiple names. Yeah. But I wouldn't be able to name the top 20 of the NBR as well. So
I suppose when you look at it, a young boy who aspires to become an All Black, they have a good role model. Yeah. Well, and they can name as many role models as you could count. Yep. Whereas in business, that's the question, whether or not we have those role models and those stories accessible.
Well, I don't think you should be too hard on us, Shane. I think it's going to take a bit of time, and it's about critical mass. And if you think about where we are now and how many educated, qualified people there are, how many business people there are, entrepreneurs. There's more than there were, say, a generation ago, and back then there was more than there was the generation before. So just over time, that's going to kind of sort itself out, and it'll become more relevant to people. So rather than the current norm being what it is, and we all know some of our statistics, there'll be a new norm, and more and more of our children will be seeing mum and dad getting up to go and do whatever they're going to do during the day. I think there's a real opportunity, and it hasn't been touched on yet, but it was mentioned that you can go and work for a corporate or go and work for a government department, and so there are different ways to become an entrepreneur. And within businesses, and I'm talking about corporate businesses, they're trying to encourage internal entrepreneurship. So you don't have to go and do it yourself. You can actually practice on someone else's time, so to speak. And when I was at that family business seminar, that's something that they said, that a lot of those big family businesses that haven't just been around for a generation, they've been around for 100 years, some of these businesses. So they've got intergenerational wealth going. That's what they said. They've got a policy within those family businesses that if you're a uri or a descendant of that family, your first job can't be within that business. You've got to go out and make mistakes on someone else's time. And be entrepreneurial on someone else's time, and then come back into the family business once you've made a few mistakes and know a little bit something about business. So that's an important thing to remember. So it's and for the rangatahi as well is that there are various paths to becoming an entrepreneur and a successful business person. I mean, for me personally, you know, I didn't get school C. Now I'm a lawyer and have an MBA with distinction. And how did I get there? Well, I made a few mistakes along the way. I did a few things that aren't normal, but I came back and got in line and realised what the game was all about. And somebody touched on being a sports person. The reason I didn't do well at school was because I was a tennis player and played for New Zealand and went overseas and did a few things. And going overseas opened my eyes as well. One of our tupunas once said back in 1846, look overseas, look to the horizons. So we've got to so if he's saying that back then, that's got to tell you that that we as a people actually do have an idea about how things work. And in terms of decolonising our minds and coming back to what I like to call the game, you know, we've got to realise we're part of an economic system that's based around capitalism. So, you know, and I don't want to lecture people, but I think it's important for those who don't know to know that within classical economics, you're either part of the labour force, you're either labour, you're either a landowner, or you're a capitalist or an entrepreneur. And for some Māori, we don't even feature in that model, and that's a real simple model. So if you're part of labour, all you're doing is subsisting. All you're doing is going week to week. If you're a landowner, well, you've got the land, you're going to enjoy a better lifestyle, but you're still just going to be spending money, but at least you'll have the Mercedes or a Ferrari. But if you're the entrepreneur, well, that's where all the growth's going to come from, and they get all the rawa, so to speak. So for me, trying to decolonise my mind was about trying to understand what the game's about. You also need a strong, in my view, a strong sense of self-identity, so knowing who you are, where you come from, all those sorts of things. And that's all consistent with the literature around entrepreneurship, which is about people who are confident. Well, how do you get confident? You've got to know who you are. So that's my view of the world anyway.
Kia ora, kia ora.